Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are you today, Steve? We've been off for a while, but the news doesn't stop. Topics don't stop. We've got a window back into Trump world today because fake news doesn't stop. Yeah, that's right. And we haven't caught up for a while. And it's almost dangerous not to keep up because I think we might have missed a whole bunch of stuff since the last time we spoke about it. But then it doesn't matter because it's replaced by new stuff.
Who would have thought that one man could give people so much to talk about?
Exactly, and nothing to talk about at the same time. So just quickly, we're just going to do a bit of a roundup of what's going on in Trump world, and the reason why is because it's been particularly bonkers for the last couple of weeks, even by Trump standards, I would have thought. I just wanted to mention quickly that I was watching this morning a clip where they were talking about Giuliani and one of Trump's lawyers guest spotting for Sean Hannity on the the right-wing talk show host circuit and taking calls from fans and basically using the whole show to denounce the Mueller investigation, that it needs to stop, and that a new council should be appointed to investigate the corruption of all of these FBI and special counsel teams, and how it's all evil and they need to get into the deep state and all of that sort of stuff. I also just wanted to mention there's something called Q going around at the moment as well. Apparently it's an unidentified person that's, running the deep state. That's apparently the latest conspiracy theory that's going around. So, apart from the wackiness of all of that, just from a legal perspective, what are these guys thinking? That's a good idea. Not only is that a good idea, but clearly they don't have, they're not spending time actually representing Trump on a legal basis if they can afford to spend 3 hours on this guy's show spitballing conspiracy stuff to deflect from whatever it is that Trump's been up to.
Well, is that where we're going now with the law, where, effectively maybe on the show they were in the court of public opinion, and if they can sway it enough, and there's midterm US elections coming up that are critical for the Trump administration, maybe it's time well spent entertaining the fans.
Well,
it's great.
Well, just like I'd love to hear what you think about this, but I saw another clip where I can't remember if it was a CNN reporter or whatever who attended a Trump rally and asked a supporter about the lack of evidence of this deep state. I can't remember if it was the deep state conspiracy or whether it was whatever else that's going on about whatever dodgy stuff that the Trump people think is going on. And the reporter just said, look, is there any evidence of this? I know you're saying it, but is there any evidence of it? And this person responded, well, there's no non-evidence of it.
That's right. There's no, and anyway, I'm surprised because isn't Trump part of the Illuminati?
I thought he was battling the Illuminati. He's the guy that's going to clean everything up, isn't he?
Look, this is fake news on fake news on fake news. I'm not sure about any of it anymore. Not that I believe any of this, by the way, but I'm just saying that what people's motives are these days, the way they think, and I'm talking about both sides now. There's so much polarization. We talk about this all the time, that I don't think any of the extreme views are actually correct. But having said that, I don't think the truth is necessarily in the middle either. So it's very difficult to work out
what's going on.
Because every instance is crazier than the last. Every instance there's a lot of polarization. Sometimes it almost appears as if Trump actually has a point. A lot of the time it appears like he's getting as wacky as the people he says he's not part of.
Well, I have to mention at this point, and I'm not sure if you saw it, but when he was describing England at one of his rallies, the UK, great place. Some people call it the United Kingdom. Some people call it Britain. Some people call it Great Britain. And even some people call it England. that was it. It's like no context or whatever, and it's just that kind of rambling speech, and then you kind of sit there and you go, what's going on? I think it's like an emotion. The words don't matter, but they do matter. That's the issue.
Well, the thing is that, you just take these sound bites of him and, but we've seen him change his, opinion in the space of 2 sentences on certain things as well, or we've seen him say things that then, a couple of days later he says, I misspoke. Yeah. So anything's possible. You certainly can't follow what his real thoughts are. And maybe if I was a conspiracist, then I'd say that just using that tactic alone often enough, changing positions, changing sides, is probably the best tactic of all to hide your true motives.
So the interesting thing here, I think, with what's happening is that I guess the Democrats have been finding it difficult to figure out a way to combat him because, and the Republicans too, I guess, he wiped out all of his opponents this way by going all against conventional wisdom, and no one's been able to figure out a way to speak against this guy and actually make an impact. So it was interesting this week that Michael Avenatti, the guy the lawyer that's representing Stormy Daniels in the hush money case, and he's now starting to represent other women that Trump has paid out, is now considering a presidential run. He was actually quoted on the weekend as saying, look, I think I can go toe-to-toe with this guy. And the punditry and commentary around it is that, well, no one ever thought Trump could win, so why is it that we couldn't think that this guy could win? And so far, he's the only one that's actually stuck a thorn in Trump's side because and someone actually pointed out on one of these shows that these women were always there and they didn't make an impact. It wasn't until this guy started representing them and getting on TV and getting in his face that he turned it into a big thing for Trump. So that doesn't mean that necessarily that he's going to be any good as a president because he's got none of that background experience or work in that type of environment. But maybe that's the only thing that can be called for here because that's the only way to battle against him.
Well, that's right, but that's battling against him on an entertainment footing, not a political footing. Yeah. It's a cheerleading, and I guess this comes back to social media again and that polarization. You're either for someone or against someone. You follow someone or you unfollow someone. There's no middle ground. I mean, you can't half follow something on social media. You're either all in or you're all out, and that's Trump's attitude, and that's also his detractors' attitudes. And I think we're seeing that real collision of that now. And if you can't battle him in the courts, you can only battle him in the sphere, public, the public arena. And I'm interested as well because those midterm elections coming up, if the Democrats do actually get enough candidates up and they can control the House, well, then potentially they might have a shot at finally getting him into court and impeaching him on something. But seems like a long road ahead for that anyway. Exactly.
Another sort of sidestepping again to a different topic, this idea that the White House has now stopped explaining Trump's tweets. I don't know why they bothered to begin with, but I think in talking about the Mueller investigation, the sheer amount of controversies that have come up in the last 6 months, and every time that Trump wants to distract, he hits Twitter, and it recently with Paul Manafort going on trial and some heat coming up on Roger Stone and all of these associates of his, all this light going on them. I think there was the other day. There was a run where he did 45 tweets on one Sunday, and it was all rage tweeting from all accounts, and that he's just using all of that to distract and stir up controversy or whatever. It almost seems to me that I don't know what that press secretary and the press sort of front for the White House, what their job actually is, really. I don't know, because Trump is pretty good at selling himself. Why do they need to be there if they can't really do that sort of job properly? Because no one believes them.
Well, I think that's where it ended up. I mean, I think I can't remember what exactly the tweets were over the last fortnight, but there are a couple of ones where I think is it Sarah Huckabee Sanders? Yeah, was standing up trying to explain them, and she just ran into a brick wall. She couldn't. She tried.
Yeah.
I mean, probably had stayed up all night trying to think up ways to explain them. And, you know, I guess I'd love to have been a fly on the wall on who made this decision. Did they just go to him and just say, oh, mate, sorry, that's it. We can't do anything anymore.
Yeah.
And just call it quits? Because I think, I can't remember what the tweets were, but they were totally unsatisfactory explanations. And when you have to resort to, this is just the president's opinion, as if it doesn't matter, you know, it makes it tough.
I guess just on the trials and all of that sort of thing that's going on, and the look into Trump world, and it hasn't gone to Trump yet, but it seems to be circling that drain closer and closer. It just seems to me that with the sheer amount of stuff going on, that it's his intention is to escalate the distraction, which isn't really entirely surprising, but it leads me to wonder: is all this stuff he's putting on Twitter, and I think we might have talking about this in a different context, is this going to be the real first Twitter courtroom battle? You know, that the Twitter comments go into court and he's held liable for what he said, if what he's said on Twitter can be tied back to the obstruction of justice investigation and all that sort of stuff. Because remember, he's now, in one of his tweets recently, he came out about that meeting that they had in 2016 about meeting with the Russians. And he obfuscated all the way through what that meeting was about, and then he sent out a tweet the other week saying, "Yeah, this is what it was for," which everyone knew already, but he's now officially made a statement on Twitter saying that that's what it was for. So, and technically, he was in that meeting. They were getting opposition research from a foreign power, which, as I understand, is not legal. So it's interesting. Would that statement then hold up in court in some capacity, maybe?
Well, I mean, the only thing I can think of is, and I can't remember when it might have been the 1990s here in Australia, Alan Bond was interviewed by his own TV station on a current affair program, and he said something that ended him up in court and ended him up in jail. Yeah. So if you take Twitter the same way, then, which I think we've spoken about years ago when they, you know, said Twitter's a publishing platform and, you know, you can be done for libel. Well, if that's the case, then even if it's his opinion and only his opinion, it's in the public record. So I think he might be in some pretty slippery slope there.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess just finally to round out our run around Trump world on a light note, I think, only because it sounds funny, but the Space Force, as announced by Mike Pence, it's not that the idea behind it is necessarily wrong. It's just this idea of like I would have thought that enough investment is going into the Air Force to do a lot of this stuff. Why you would need a separate branch of the Army to be created for this, and one that sounds like a 60s TV show, no less, just sort of, again, seems like one of those things that, a bit like The Wall, you know, it's put out there and then it just never ends up happening. Well,
we know one day that there will be a Space Force. We just don't know when. And, you know, I'd love to know how these things come about. Does some bright spark in the Defence Forces whisper to someone and say, hey, if you go and, you know, pitch Space Force to him, he's going to say yes.
But the sad thing is that it could have been just as simple as that too, without any detail. Oh yeah, Space Force, I love that.
That's right, and I mean it's great. Ronald Reagan had Star Wars, and Space Force sounds fantastic, and we've got a whole lot of films now out with this sort of Space Force idea, and I think it's wonderfully ridiculous, I guess. I mean, I guess.
But couldn't they build it out of the existing Air Force?
Well, yeah, I don't know. The thing that's a bit different with this is that Ronald Reagan invested in research, and that's the research that has given us a lot of the laser technologies and a lot of the communications technologies we have today. This just seems more, as you say, like some sort of movies script, so there'll be 20 guys ready to blast up into a rocket, I don't know, to deflect an asteroid or shoot aliens.
Exactly. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out. But I'm guessing that, in all seriousness, yes, there's probably going to be a need for this. Whether it's right now is another thing, considering some of the existing sort of platforms or organizations that are in place at the moment. That there's a lot of private investment going into space as well that probably should be accounted for. But I guess maybe in light of the era that we're in and the administration that's announcing this, it just seems more farcical than force, shall we say.
Oh, yeah, I don't think there'll be any disagreement from anyone with that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, we'll wrap it up there, and we'll have another installment about Trump for sure at some point in the future.
I can't wait.
Absolutely. All right. So don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there. Watch us on YouTube, Vimeo, etc. Subscribe to our RSS feeds. Get us on your devices. And hope you enjoy the website and all the content that we produce there. All right. So that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.